Well, unfortunately, these are the times that show different come together and service a little silver. So
Yeah, just get don't pile. Marty, you want to come up here? All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank y'all for being here. I just want to get started by announcing just a few folks that we have with us. Obviously, our First Lady, Marty Kemp, and two of our daughters here today, Congressman Austin Scott, Public Service Commission Chairman Jason Shaw, obviously General Wilson with the Georgia National Guard, our Agriculture Commissioner Tyler Harper, our Insurance Commissioner John King, Head of GEMA, Director Chris Stallings. We've got Councilman Andy Gibbs from the city, Chairman Slaughter from the county, Sheriff Paul. A lot of other local law enforcement, local elected officials, obviously the local legislative delegation from this area. We appreciate them. Kim Green from Georgia Power and Danny Nichols from Colquitt EMC. And I know President Carvajal is here from Valdosta State. I know I'm probably missing some folks, but we just appreciate all that these folks have been doing from a state and local perspective. As you know, Valdosta has taken another heavy hit, as has been so unfortunately frequent in recent memory. And I would just tell you, from a statewide perspective, this storm spared no one. We've had 17 fatalities just in the state of Georgia alone. And as Tim Golden, the DOT commissioner, said to me yesterday, these storms are taking the soul out of me. And I know that's how people are feeling down here. Another Lowndes County native told me, I never want to go through something like that hell again. This storm has also taken one of our finest, firefighter Leon Davis from Blackshear, Georgia, the Blackshear Department Assistant Chief, when a tree fell on his vehicle while responding to a call. In Thompson and McDuffie County, a 27-year-old mother and her 1-month-old twin boys were killed when a tree fell on their home. In Washington County, a 7-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl died when a tree fell on their home and was trapped inside a burning house. A 58-year-old man in Dublin, Georgia, died when a tree crashed into his home. And there's many others in Florida, South Carolina, and North Carolina. Over 40 fatalities total. We've also had historic rain events across the state. While you've seen firsthand the destruction from fallen trees and down power lines and crumbled buildings in this part of the state, even in our capital city, where the record rainfall in the past was 9 inches in 48 hours, a combination of storms over the last few days dumped over 11 inches of rain. We're dealing with flash flooding and, believe it or not, mudslides and avalanches up in the northern part of our state. I wanted to give you a quick DOT update and a couple of other state updates, and you'll hear from General Wilson, Director Stallings, and Congressman Scott, as well as Ag Commissioner Harper. On the DOT side, in this area, if not right now, but very shortly, all roads on the state route side should be at least have one lane passable. I think that'll be achieved tomorrow. There'll also be additional contractors coming in to start working on other roadways. Currently across the state, we know we have 140 blockages on state routes. Commissioner McMurray's here. Be glad to answer any questions when we wrap. But he tells me that this number will go up. That's how devastating this storm was from a statewide perspective. I know the locals are experiencing a local traumatic event once again in Valdosta and Lowndes County, but truly this storm has affected dozens and dozens of communities the same way this one is, and that's why that number will continue to grow. Commissioner McMurray has asked his Northeast Georgia crews to head to the Augusta area, which is really on the end of the path of this hurricane that moved through Georgia. He's got his Northwest Georgia crews currently here and in this area trying to help clear roadways. It's also going to take several days to continue to get traffic signals back working again. There's literally thousands of those out across the state. Georgia National Guard, we've got 170 folks here on the ground, 800 statewide, and that number will continue to grow tomorrow and throughout the next few days. From the power company's perspective, and Kim Green is here from Georgia Power, they still have over 500,000 people that are without power in our state. Danny Nichols, Colquitt EMC, is also here. They have about the same amount, a little over 500,000 people that are still without power. I want to thank them both, and the literally thousands of men and women who are responding, working as hard as they can to get power back on. We're also currently dealing with water and wastewater issues around the state. We have 19 different locations we're dealing with wastewater problems. We have 25 boil water advisories. We have 38 drinking water sites that we've stood up. We've got dozens of shelters around the state. As of yesterday, we had about 1,100 people in our shelters. And we're also deploying kitchens to make sure we have adequate food supply in hard-hit areas. We have 5 of those so far, and one of those is in Lowndes. Currently, Verizon has 32 non-operational towers. AT&T has about 7% of their towers that are out. The Georgia Forestry Commission, Director Sabo is here. They have 175 folks working statewide, 10 different chainsaw teams, and they have folks here in this local area as well. Commissioner Harper's going to give you a quick update on ag, but we know that we've had 107 poultry facilities damaged or totally destroyed, 15 dairies that have been affected, and dozens of other facilities really from here to Valdosta that have been affected. As he told me earlier, literally every commodity in this state has been damaged by this storm. We believe there'll be a higher monetary value of damage than Hurricane Michael. I did want to pass along on behalf of the locals that are with us today. They're asking people, as you clear debris in your yard or your business, please do not put that on the right-of-way. That is hampering the ability of power companies and other first responders to clear roads and get power back up. And a last part of note, we're currently servicing the same level that we have in Lowndes County with really hard-hit counties, a lot of assets, 32 counties, which really tells you how wide this storm is. When we looked at it from the air before landing here in Valdosta, it literally looked like a 250-mile tornado hit, and it was a hurricane. So we're asking people to continue to be patient with us. Director Stallings is going to give an update after General Wilson on what our priorities are from a GEMA perspective, but I'll let Director Wilson come to you now, then Director Stallings, then we'll hear from Congressman Scott and Commissioner Harper, and we'll be glad, really anybody up here is glad to take any questions that you have, made, whether it's local or state. General.
Okay, sir, thank you very much. Hey, well, good afternoon. As General Kemp said, or Governor Kemp said, we've got over 800 folks. We'll have over 800 soldiers, airmen, and volunteers from our State Defense Force working across the state by the end of the day. I expect that number is going to grow as we continue to get additional mission assignments and we assess the damage. Obviously, Valdosta, this area was one of the first areas that we were able to respond to, so we've got almost 200 folks that are down here today coordinating with the local and state agencies involved to try to provide the right kind of support for the community down here. So some of the missions that we're currently doing is we've got route clearance and debris clearance teams working alongside the local folks and our contracted teams that are in here. We're really trying to move everything out of the way so that we can get power crews in here to get the power turned back on as quickly as possible. We've also got assets that are moving critical supplies all over the state. So food, water, generators. We've got lots of trucks and manpower that are doing that mission set as well. We've embedded LNO teams, liaison teams in each of the affected counties so that we can try to coordinate the support as best as we can. And we're just going to continue over the next couple of days to assess the damaged area, and we'll build whatever capability and capacity that's going to be required to make sure that we're getting after it for the local communities, just like the one down here. I would ask, this is hard work though. I would ask that everybody just be patient. If you look just over the last couple of days, a lot of hard work has happened at the state, or at the local, state, and the federal level to try to just get things back to normal as quickly as possible. But again, we're going to do all that we can for the citizens of Georgia. So thank you very much, sir, and I look forward to any questions you may have afterwards.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Stallings, the Director of Georgia Emergency Management, Homeland Security. Thank you, Governor Kemp. I want to highlight a couple of the state's responses and how it operates. Fortunately for our state, under the leadership of Governor Kemp, a state of emergency was declared early. And by doing that early, that allowed us to do a lot of things that prepped us for at least being able to respond as quickly as we have, including calling up the National Guard. As you know, that's your citizen soldiers, and it takes a little while to rally those. So we rallied those teams early. We started pre-positioning them along with other state assets all over the state. But knowing the impact of the state, we had to spread those equitably. So we do have great teams here, but as the governor mentioned, we're in 32 counties across the state. Our priorities right now are roadway clearance to emergency locations. We have to get our hospitals available. We have to get our emergency rooms available. We have to get those areas functioning first. And a lot of times it's not just so that we can get resources to them or get individuals to them, but to ensure they've got adequate power, water, so that they can serve those that are responding. General Wilson informed us just earlier that yesterday one of his members on a cut team stepped on a live power line, which rendered the soldier unconscious and had to be transported. As our folks are out there working, we have to have these resources available. It's so extremely important to know that, yes, we had 17 fatalities, and that is terrible, but that number will most likely climb as a result of cleanup. We lose more individuals through the cleanup process due to dangerous situations. So I'm asking you as a local, please stay off the roads. If you don't have necessary travel, we're asking you keep those roads clear. As you've heard earlier, there's only one lane of travel. So if there's only one lane of travel, that's what our first responders, our heroes that are out there working, have to use so that we can move those resources around. And I understand that you want to see the damage. Maybe you've got a property somewhere you want to investigate. I think that's extremely important. But if we're blocking that one lane so that we can't get fire and EMS to our workers that are out there supporting you, or get power teams through there, that's extremely important that you give us that lane. Our priority is to get that one lane. Once we get a one lane everywhere, then we'll go back and begin that white line to white line clearance. It's so important though that we get that availability to get those commodities, those things that you're going to need to sustain and recover. We got to get those to you. Once the state establishes that through all our state priorities, then you'll begin to see us start getting into those surface streets. You'll see us start reaching out into those county roads. But our priority, as mentioned, is we've got to get our state routes open so that we can continue to truck in the resources that you need at the local level to ensure recovery. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Congressman for some remarks, but at the end, I'm certainly available for any questions. Sir?
Thank you. First thing I want to say is thank you to all the volunteers that are here. Just shaking hands and speaking with people up here that are handing out ice and water to our neighbors. One of them's come all the way from North Carolina to help, and that's about as American as it gets. So thank you to all of our volunteers that are here. I also want to thank the linemen. I know they were out working late last night. They'll be working 78 hours a week to get the power back on, as will our EMS and others. So thank you to all of those people that are out there working, and especially our Guard General. Thank you for what you've done. You can expect that in a very bipartisan manner, you will see your Georgia delegation that represents these areas out there together, making sure that the American citizens know that when we get back to Washington, there will be a bipartisan disaster relief package passed. With regard to agriculture, as most of you probably know, I'm the Vice Chair of the Ag Committee. I hope that our format will be very much similar to what we did in Hurricane Michael, where we work with the land grant institutions to calculate the value of the crop losses and then get as much as we can back to the states for Tyler Harper and Brian Kemp to work on an equitable distribution manner. So with that said, for our farmers, make sure that you document as best you can the damage that you have. And I'm going to turn it over now to Tyler Harper, and we'll be there for you.
Sorry, guys. Sorry about that.
First off, I just want to say thank you, especially here to the locals in Lowndes County and the surrounding communities. The work that you've put in, as has already been said, just echoing those comments of the timeless, the tireless effort that all of you do on the local level to ensure that we get back online as quickly as possible. It takes those efforts, local, state, and federal, to make this happen. And it certainly doesn't go unnoticed. The leadership of the governor and our entire team, and Chris Stallings and his team at GEMA, and others, and in general your team, that hit the ground running to ensure that we bounce back as quickly as possible. As far as agriculture is concerned, this has been a really tough year in the agricultural industry already. Economically, agriculture is in a really tough spot. And now we are dealing with the significant devastation of Hurricane Helene from Valdosta all the way to Augusta, as the governor already mentioned, across all agricultural commodities. We know that we have significant damage in the poultry industry with poultry houses that are either significantly damaged or completely destroyed. The majority of our cotton crop in that particular area is significantly damaged or 100% lost. We have a lot of issues in our pecan crop and other tree nuts, a lot of damage to facilities, a lot of damage to our timber, and I know our friends at the Georgia Forestry Commission are starting their work to assess that damage. Our team at the Department of Agriculture is working to assess the damage as well. I talked to the dean of the College of Ag yesterday and his team and their extension agents. We talked last night. I know there's going to be a lot of our UGA extension agents that will be reaching out to our farm families and farmers across the state in the impacted zone to try to get information from them so we can best understand what the damage, the totality of the damage, so we have that information to take that to our friends on the federal level. I want to say a huge thank you to Congressman Scott. He and I have been talking daily since before this storm come into the state, with his role especially on the Ag Committee, on what we can do to ensure that agriculture and the disaster relief that we're going to need and will need for our farm families across the state is addressed as quickly as possible. But it's going to take some help from our farm families to do that. As has been said, document, document, document. I know we want to hurry up and clean up, but the more we can document the damage, the better information we have to get the needed resources and the help that we can from our federal partners and others to be able to get you back on your feet as quickly as possible. Obviously, calling your insurance agent, notifying FSA and USDA, and anything that we can do at the department, we're here to help. Our team's going to be on the ground and activated is through this storm until we're able to get on the other side of it. We're going to do everything we can to get our ag industry back on its feet as quickly as possible. Last thing I would do is just tell you to pray for our farm families, pray for our farmers, pray for all Georgians, and especially those that have lost their lives. We have a lot of folks that are hurting right now across our state, and it's going to be a tough time as we get through this, but we're going to be here for you. The department's going to be here for you. We have a lot of resources on our website under our Hurricane Helene page. Please go to that. You can find all of those resources available. We're also working on donation capability as well. We've had a number of people reach out asking how they can help farmers and producers monetarily. We are currently in the process of putting that together. We hope to be getting that information out as quickly as possible, so folks that want to participate in that particular way, they will be able to do that. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all to what you're doing. We're in this together. The Department of Agriculture and our entire team across the state, we're going to be here for you. I'll turn it back over to Governor Kemp, and I'll be happy to answer any questions after this is over as well. Thank you, Governor.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, everyone. Just a couple of quick reminders. So, Insurance Commissioner John King's with us. His team is on the ground across the state dealing with potential insurance fraudsters and others, so he's glad to answer questions for you. Attorney General Chris Carr is not with us today, but citizens that are worried about consumer protection issues can reach out to the Attorney General's office. And then lastly, Kim Green, CEO of Georgia Power, and then Danny Nichols, CEO, President for Colquitt EMC, are both with us. So if you want more specific questions on power, just ask those. We'll get them to the mic. With that, we'll open it up for questions. Well, just tell them that we're going to be here with them as long as it takes. We're going to throw every asset that we have at this storm. We're very well pre-prepared. The problem that we're having, and what I would urge our citizens to just have patience with us, because when somebody texts me from, Lowndes County, I'll get a text from Berrien County, from Richmond County, from Washington County, and they're all saying, we got hammered. And I'm telling them, we literally have dozens and dozens and dozens of counties that got hammered just like you do. And so like Director Stallings said, we're having to prioritize our response to get one lane of road open so we can get medical vehicles. Especially yesterday, we were still in the process of doing this. I mean, in Lowndes County alone, we had, I think, over 115 or over 115 structures that we could not get to, that people were telling us there's somebody in that structure. So obviously that has been our focus, not only here but all across the state. We're dealing with flooding issues in North Georgia, and so it has been unlike any other storm I think we've ever faced because of the size, the wind field that this storm brought through, and how it literally is affecting 159 counties, not just 20 or 30 counties in South Georgia. So I would just urge people to be patient. But what it looks like from the air, I mean, it looks like a tornado went off. It looks like a bomb went off. And it's not just here. It looks like this from here all the way to Augusta and everything especially on the east side of this storm. And we're having flooding issues and other issues on the west side of the storm. But we have a lot of assets. We also have a lot of damage. So we're going to stay here and continue to work hard. Thankfully, the weather's pretty. I think you'll continue to see things ramping up as we get roadways open up and start moving assets too. We had assets before the storm, but the problem when you're dealing with a statewide storm, just like the DOT teams that we had in Northwest Georgia and Northeast Georgia, we needed to deploy them a day ago up there. Well, they've got things in good order, so now we're moving them south. So we'll continue to have more and more assets coming to these areas in the days ahead. But I would just tell people to be patient, help your neighbor, and thank these first responders. And it's like Director Stallings said, it is dangerous work out there. Power lines that's touching a guardrail, that touches a guard troop soldier, that sends that individual to the hospital. So we're having to be very careful when we go into these areas. I know people want us to rush in there and get to work, but we got to be very careful about what we're doing.
Do we have a rough estimate yet for when power might be restored, not only in Valdosta and Augusta, but in smaller communities?
Well, I'll let Danny and Kim both come address the power issues. I mean, look, this is something we haven't seen before. The amount of damage, how spread out it is, the transmission lines and other things that they're dealing with. But they can also talk specifically to the assets and the people they're throwing at it.
Thank you, Governor. I'm Kim Green with Georgia Power. And as the governor has described, this has been an unprecedented level of damage. And compared with what many of you experienced here in Valdosta and South Georgia last year with Adelia, we are seeing more than twice the level of damage on our distribution system and much more damage on our transmission system, which actually takes a little bit more time and is more complex in some cases to address. So this is certainly going to be multiple days of outage. We had at the peak about over 130,000 customers out. That's down to about 77,000, but it will be a few days, if not a week, before we're able to get everybody restored.
Was that specifically for Lowndes County?
That's specifically, yeah, thank you. That would be specifically for the Lowndes County area. Certainly there are other parts of Georgia that were not hit as hard. And in fact, we have restored over 400,000 customers across the entire state. And as I mentioned, about 50,000 customers here so far.
So I'm Danny Nichols with Cockwood EMC, and just give a echo to what Ms. Kim said. This is probably twice the damage that we saw in Idalia. Some markers that we look at, we had about 500 poles that were broken with Idalia, and we're above 1,000 poles now. Now that's included in all 7 counties that we serve, but I'd say about 2/3 of those are here in Lowndes County. That's the bulk of our customers and the bulk of our damage. So it took about 7.5, 8 days to get all the power restored from Idalia. I would expect at least, it's hard to make prognostication. There's a lot of places we haven't been yet, but a matter of a couple of weeks would not surprise me. But we're going to work 16 hours a day, with our crews, and we're going to give it all we got until we get them back on.
With respect to resources, I should mention, and I apologize, you did ask me to talk about resources. We do have in the state almost up to 15,000 resources, so we are bringing folks in from, I know we're touching more than 11 states. I know that's the same for the EMCs. So you will see a lot of people out, a lot of line workers. Again, this is very dangerous work. They're well trained and they're well prepared to handle it. But being sympathetic to the fact that they are going to need to access areas. Also, again, many of them have left their homes that suffered damage themselves. They've left their families to take care of people here in Georgia. Certainly, we need to, again, respect the fact that they are doing incredibly difficult work and, again, are more committed than any of you could probably ever know to getting power restored safely and as quickly as possible.
I think just one other thing to note, just to keep in perspective, besides the Big Bend area of Florida where the storm hit, and obviously power outage, I mean, just the whole town like Stinging-Hatchie was destroyed. We had over, and still close to 1 million outages in Georgia. I know at one point yesterday there was 1.4 million outages in South Carolina, and I know there's in North Carolina and other states. So this just isn't one or two states dealing with huge power outages. This is a multi-state event, which also creates other challenges for our power company partners.
Governor Kemp, you mentioned about how it really is an issue that a lot of states are dealing with. Have you talked with any of the governors or talked with President Biden about kind of what you guys can do and work together on this?
Well, I haven't talked to the president. I was trading messages with the FEMA administrator, Criswell. I talked to Governor McMaster yesterday. Governor Lee texted me. I tried Governor DeSantis, but I hadn't reached him yet. But I've had, other, Governor Sanders in Arkansas, and other folks that have reached out offering assistance. And of course, Director Stallings in the Georgia Emergency Management Agency. One of the good things about having the State Operations Center open in Atlanta, which we were there, have been there, nonstop over the last 2 days. It helps us coordinate not only state and local assets, and also our federal partners are embedded there with us, FEMA, but we're also talking to other states about other assets. I know there was a request from Florida for a helicopter from us. So there's a lot of that always goes on. We have mutual aid agreements, and we'll do what we can to help each other. But obviously, my focus is on Georgia. Governor DeSantis' focus is on Florida, and, Governor McMaster's focus is on South Carolina. And that's what we'll do first, and then we'll help people as we can.
Governor, just give an explanation about after the storm. Fatalities we've already had, almost 20. You're expecting more. What is it that citizens can do to keep themselves safe?
Well, I think the biggest thing is if you don't have to get out right now, or if you do have to get out, just try to stay away from these areas where roads are blocked and we have crews working. If you see down power lines, don't get anywhere close to that. I saw a down power line in Atlanta yesterday and people were standing right next to it, just chatting. Those things are really dangerous, and like what happened with our guardsmen, they may be touching something else that you may touch. So just try to stay clear and use common sense, and just give us a few days to at least get these roads clear and get some organization to what's going on. And literally over 30 counties that we're having the same kind of issues that we're having here in Lowndes County.
Governor, does the state plan on opening any shelters for people that maybe step in these communities and don't have power for next
Yeah, let me let Director Stallings talk about that. We already have shelters open.
Yes, ma'am. One of the things that we'll do, not only along with our shelters, we have what's called pods or points of distribution. And so we'll bring in services, water, food, those needs, and we'll set those up at communities that are specifically struggling to get in and out. And we'll bring those commodities as close as we can, and then we'll facilitate, along with our guardsmen and women. They'll be out there delivering these if we have to by hand. We've even got air assets if we need to. So we're focusing on those communities. We're going to get those resources in there, which is extremely important. Don't come looking for them. We'll get them to you. Contact your local emergency management team. You can find them easily. Ashley Ty here is doing a great job here in Lowndes County. You can reach those teams at each county level, and they'll submit those resources. And once we compile that list, it becomes a priority. We know we got to get roads open, but we got to get our folks the water and nutrition they need to survive the long haul.
When it comes to storm cleanup, what are going to be the best ways for people to avoid any type of scams or anything like that may harm the financial?
Hello, my name is John King. I'm Georgia's Insurance Commissioner, and this is one of the biggest priorities for our department. We have our law enforcement agents working very closely with the sheriffs and the police departments in getting out to those communities and give people warnings on how to protect themselves. My biggest message today is don't do any major repairs. Only do the necessary repairs to make sure that you don't have any further damage to your property. But don't sign any contracts. Make sure you know who you're dealing with. Preferably deal with a local contractor, but make sure you get your claim in. And we've already talked to all the insurance companies. We're having to move into the areas. We're right now waiting for a determination of where, if we do a claims village, where to set those up to make sure that people can start their claims, and we'll be watching that very carefully. If there are any questions, people just need to go to georgiaoci.gov, and they can have all the contacts there, file complaints. We're standing by with our whole team ready to respond. Thank you.
Governor Kemp, you mentioned that this storm is probably going to be more costly than Hurricane Michael. For some perspective, can you tell us how much around there it costs for the state to recover then, and how much you're anticipating it could cost now?
You want to speak? Yeah, I can. From an agricultural perspective, Hurricane Michael was over $2 billion in agricultural damage, $2 to $2.5 billion plus. And so when you put it in that perspective, the best way I've explained when I've been asked about ag damage is in explaining that is telling folks that east of I-75 it's worse than Hurricane Michael. In the damage that we're already seeing and the damage that we're already assessing. You've heard from the power companies and others telling you that compared to other storms, how much more damage this particular storm has caused. A lot of that is because of the widespread nature of the storm and the fact that on that side, those farm families were on the dirty side of the storm. So in comparison, obviously we don't have numbers yet. We're gathering that data. We're assessing that damage with our friends at the forestry, with timber, and our ag partners to assess the ag damage. But just in the ag sector alone, it was $2 to $2.5 billion in Michael, and so we're expecting that or greater just on the agricultural side itself. So significant damage. A lot of work to do, but we've already started those conversations, as Congressman Scott mentioned, and we already started the process, thanks to his help and others, to go ahead and get that federal disaster like we did during Hurricane Michael, to get that as quickly out to our farm families as quickly as possible. We're going to be here for that. We're going to work with our legislators and others to help make that happen.
I would just add, I know just with Director Stallings was just telling me, just with one debris contractor, just in southwest Georgia for Hurricane Michael, just moving debris, hauling debris off, getting debris out of the roadways was $250 million. And we're dealing with a statewide event. So it's going to be a big number. It's going to take us a long time to deal with that.
Can you speak to the fuel supply? Are you having any issues with that or anticipating anything coming out of gasoline?
Right now we're not. There's no need for a run on fuel stations. We have a lot of responders out there that are going to need access to that fuel. It's more about making sure that we've got power restored to our gas pumps. But right now we have no reason for there to be any shortage, so no reason to fear that there's going to be any outages whatsoever.
And that's one of the good points in the emergency order. The state of emergency, it lets us be able to have the ability to move those kind of commodities around as needed and get fuel where it's needed. So we're in good shape as of right now.
Governor, you mentioned just a few moments ago that yesterday you guys were aware of at least 150 structures where you were told, hey, we know there's people
We have gotten to those structures. They've been cleared. Unfortunately, we did have one fatality there, but I have no other details on that.
I know that the state was sending a generator here to the hospital in Valdosta that accidentally got damaged. The backup generators got damaged. Are they back up and running now?
Yes, they are back up and running. And I know Georgia Power was working on that as well as us with the generator. All right, thank y'all for being here. We appreciate it.
Is that your phone? No, sir, it's not my phone. I don't know who's phone it is.
Yeah, he's fine.
We're not going anywhere. Anything that we can do.